The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right, Senator Cynthia Lummis, some crypto lobbying organizations and a group of professors are calling on a federal court to dismiss an SEC lawsuit against Coinbase. Joining us now to discuss is the Chamber of Digital Commerce Vice President of Policy, Cody Carbone. Welcome to the show, Cody.
Hey, good morning, Jen and Lawrence. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, Cody.
Thanks for being here. All right, let's talk about these amicus briefs that were filed last week. It echoes Coinbase's own arguments, and the motion is to dismiss the case. Talk to us about what's going on here. Why do you feel it's necessary to do this, and where do we go next?
Yeah, absolutely. The SEC, as we all know, has been on a tirade against the digital asset industry. And so cases like this, when they're going after a really good actor like Coinbase, gives the industry an opportunity to kind of voice their opinions and fight back. We believe that the SEC is acting unconstitutionally against the separation of powers and the major questions doctrine I'm sure we've heard a lot about, as well as due process. The SEC has been filing these enforcement actions against the industry without any rhyme or reason and in favor of doing them instead of rulemakings. And so as we have seen in Congress, and we are discussing and debating all of these different legislative proposals that would change the jurisdictional lines of who gets to regulate the digital asset industry, the question is up in the air. Should it be the SEC? Should it be the CFTC? And the SEC is trying to regulate the entire industry, and we thought it was necessary to fight back and claim that that was improper.
So Cody, of course, I mean, with regards to the SEC trying to regulate the industry, they're seeing a vacuum. They're trying to, like all agencies, they try to fill that power vacuum. That said, one of the other cases the SEC has brought up is also against Binance. You have not filed an amicus brief with that, correct? Why not?
We haven't done it this time. It doesn't mean we're not going to, or we're not looking into it. We have been very consistent in filing briefs in the Wahi matter, in the Ripple case, and in Coinbase here that we will continue to call out the SEC's outside authority or their ungiven authority of just trying to regulate this whole industry in one fell swoop. So it doesn't mean we won't. We don't believe they have the delegated authority from Congress right now to regulate the whole industry. And so we'll continue calling that out until Congress kind of resolves the issue.
Is the issue with Binance more severe than just what they were trading, but how they were managing their money? I mean, do you want to really get into that quagmire?
I don't think we would comment on that. There's different reputational issues, of course, when it comes to Binance versus Coinbase or other, players in this space. But we will always continue to call out the SEC just labeling every token as a security when we don't think they have that authority. And that would likely, if we were going to go forward in the Binance matter, that would likely be our argument.
Have you had any kind of productive discussions with any of the regulators?
Yes, actually, we've talked to the SEC, we've talked to the CFTC. I think it's the beauty of the chamber and being the voice for the entire industry. There is still an open door to go in there and talk. There are still people at the staff level willing to engage. However, I don't believe, when we file briefs like this, we're not getting the rosiest reception from the chair. The chair has a vendetta against this industry. I don't think, instances like this change that or help repair the relationship. However, we still have been able to go and talk to staff. So we have had those constructive conversations.
So after you went into the SEC, they didn't charge you with securities dealing?
No, thankfully. Fingers crossed it doesn't happen next time. Seems
to be a thing that happens there.
Yeah.
All the briefs that we mentioned in the introduction cite a recent Supreme Court case, West Virginia versus the Environment Protection Agency case. Talk to us about the relevance here. Why are we referencing that?
Yeah, this is the major questions doctrine. And what it says that issues of economic and political significance have to, if agencies are going to regulate those type of issues, they have to have very clear statutory authority from Congress. As we have seen, as evident by the debate in Congress right now on the jurisdictional lines we talked about earlier on who gets to regulate digital assets, the SEC has not been given that clear authority. And so it is still a major question as a crypto industry. This is $1 trillion industry. And so the SEC taking that unilateral authority and just saying, everything's a security, we believe that violates that major questions doctrine, and it's up to Congress to fill that vacuum.
Except from the SEC's perspective, they're not just, and as I said before, they were filling a vacuum. They're filling that vacuum because the chair views, and he's not somebody who doesn't understand crypto. Right. I mean, this is the last guy I would say Gary Gensler doesn't know a thing about crypto. He actually does. You might not agree with what he believes, but nonetheless, that's the way he views it, is that everything except for Bitcoin, possibly Ether. We don't know his views entirely on Ether yet, but I would venture to say he pretty much thinks that's a security as well. But his view is these are securities. Therefore, I have the right. We have the obligation, rather. The SEC has the obligation to regulate it. Therefore, the real issue seems to be not so much the SEC going in for a power grab, although that's the way it seems, and it's the way I'm pretty sure people at the CFTC might see it. But it could also be that, hey, the real problem is that the legislators aren't saying it's not a security. And if he looks at it and he says, gee, this checks off those 4 boxes in the Howey test, this is security. Shouldn't, how come the crypto industry isn't, I don't want to say forceful enough, but, a lot of people, a lot of defense lobbyists get things done. How come you guys haven't been getting things done here? Getting it defined already after how many years in existence?
Man, Lawrence, we're trying our hardest. I think there's an educational gap that we always talk about with this industry. And so we're finally at a point where we're getting lawmakers up to speed. So it was time to take a nice little victory lap before Congress broke for August recess, because it was the first time that we saw legislative initiatives that would define those jurisdictional lines move through Congress. We still have a lot of work to go. Congress not acting and not filling that void is a huge component of this. However, the SEC acting unilaterally and just throwing out enforcement action saying everything is a digital asset security and everything is an investment contract, when we've had now cases like the Ripple case say that's not necessarily true, and doing this in favor of trying to promote rules and actually do their job and go through the Administrative Procedure Act and do the rulemakings and give notice and comment, that's what we're arguing against here. So Congress definitely a component, but the SEC is also acting out of bounds here.
All right. And lastly, what needs to happen next? You mentioned that Congress needs to act. You mentioned the Ripple case, but the SEC is appealing that. What do you think is realistically going to happen next to give us a step forward?
Well, I'm hoping in this case, in the Coinbase matter, that the matter is dismissed, and that will be another win for the industry. And hopefully that will provide more motivation for Congress to act. That's going to be the real resolution here. Congress has to fill that void. Until Congress filled that void, or until there's administration change, which is not until 2024, we're going to continue to have to fight against the industry, against the SEC. There's going to continue to be these enforcement actions. The SEC is emboldened. Gary Gensler has a vendetta against the industry. He has made that very clear. If people thought that Ripple was going to make him back down, I think the appeal was, we could have predicted that. I don't think that's going to happen. He then had the Terraform Labs case, which he is now banking on. And so Gary Gensler is not going to stop. Congress really has to fill that void. And so I'm hoping that the Coinbase matter, once that's resolved, that will provide another motivator for Congress to act.
All right, Cody, thanks so much for joining the show this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
That was the Chamber of Digital Commerce Vice President of Policy, Cody Carbone.